A Case Study in Propaganda Jihad. This is Aben al-Hurriya, son of freedom. Purpose of the study: to do a case study of a cleric who has been co-opted by Islamic actors, to draw out the danger of such a stance, to suggest a wiser approach to Muslims. Okay, so this is going to be a review and an analysis of a presentation brought by this man. He's a pastor. His name is Dr. Bob Roberts. He has a church in Keller, Texas. Okay, so here's the information about him. The video can be found at YouTube. Quote, Why Evangelicals Hate Muslims, an Evangelical Minister's Perspective. Notice the imputing of hate to evangelicals. This is a precursor to preventing hate speech, which in Islamic theology is criticism of Islam, even if those criticisms are true. Dr. Bob Roberts, senior pastor and founding pastor of Northwood Church, Keller, Texas. Roberts has a D.Min from Fuller Theological Seminary. He founded the Northwood Church about 25 years ago. He has a staff of 20. He has an interest in world mission but was unable to go overseas for personal reasons. He has translated his missions interest into an ecumenical expression or into a desire for cross-cultural evangelism stateside. So the first question he asks is, why do evangelicals dislike Muslims? And he cites this figure: 57% of evangelicals have a negative view of Muslims. And his first answer is, well, we don't know any Muslims. That's one of the reasons why we hate them. The thrust of the message is that too many evangelicals don't like Muslims because they don't know any. We don't realize that Muslims are just like us. They are as afraid of us as we are of them. Same as with rattlesnakes, so relax. More Muslims are persecuted by the so-called extremists than any other group, so don't say that Muslims are dangerous. Note the phrase "the extremists" is a misleading term which leads the listener to think that the problem comes from extremists and not from Islamic doctrine itself. So then his second point is that the reason why we don't like Muslims is because of our own crazy eschatology. The thrust of the message is that we allow our speculative eschatology to get in the way of good relations. We actually know very little about Jesus' return, with the implication that none of the assured teachings would disagree with Muslim eschatology. He includes the statement that the teaching that the Jews have to go back to Palestine is not necessarily supportable from biblical eschatology. So here is a Palestinianism smuggled in as a biblical teaching and is meant to deprogram a Baptist's premillennial dispensationalism. We should not let speculative theology get in the way of relationships. The suggestion seems to be that theology that would put us at odds with Muslims is the speculative type. We should be willing to have a relationship with Jews, Muslims, Arabs, Palestinians, and everyone else. Notice that he triple counts Muslims. Okay, so along with the speculative eschatologies, he mentions in point 2 speculative theology. So he's kind of implying that a lot of our problems with getting along with Muslims come from our relying on theology that is of the speculative type. And he makes the point, crazy theology makes us do crazy things. That's a very pregnant statement because from the Christian perspective, it's actually the Muslim who has crazy theology and it makes him do crazy things. But here the message is that it is the Christians that have crazy theology that makes them do crazy things. So then the third point, he says that we've rejected the gospel. So he says that by not loving Muslims, we are rejecting the gospel. If Christians regard Muslims as their enemies, they are commanded to love their enemies. By accusing Christians of rejecting the gospel, Roberts manipulates Christians into complying with his solution. He gives a picture of dinner parties between Christians and Muslims. He says he has an event at his church in which he brings hundreds of Muslims to church. So here's a picture of the event that he has once a year, he says, in his church. But what about 2 Corinthians 6:14 through 18? Anyone who knows the supremacist character of Islam can see that Muslims will allow Christians to set themselves up to be compromised. Remember 2 Corinthians 6:14 through 18. It is the height of arrogance to think that several hundred Muslims invited to and visiting a megachurch will eventually convert to the gospel. The penalty for apostasy is death in Islam. Any Muslim contemplating converting to Christianity will most likely do it in a secret or a safe or private space. So any large group of Muslims coming to your church will see themselves as conducting dawah. None of them are going to be, or almost none of them are going to be interested in converting to Christianity. To think that you can bring Muslims into the faith that way is very, very naive, and actually I would suggest arrogant. Now he tells the story, Pastor Bob, he tells the story about how he flew to Afghanistan, of all places. He had one of his friends named Umar, his mother died, so Bob decided to fly to Afghanistan to Umar's mother's funeral. And he said that he hadn't told Umar that he was coming, but when he got to the airport, there Umar was waiting for him. So Umar must have had a backdoor way of knowing that Bob was on his way. And when Bob says, how come you're here to meet me at the airport? This is dangerous for you. Umar says, it doesn't matter, Bob, if you're a Muslim or a Christian. I suggest that's just pure propaganda and untrue. So then Bob quotes this passage from John 15:13, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friend. So the third point of the message is that he uses John 15:13 to imply that the Christian should be willing to lay down his life for his Muslim friends. The effect of this statement is to put Christians under an obligation to lower boundaries to Muslims. This is a perfect setup to allow civilization jihad to do a blitzkrieg through the Bible Belt. He applies taking up our cross to mean putting our lives on the line for others, including our Muslim friends. But what Jesus meant by taking up our cross was the denial of the self in order to follow him in power. Muslims are not the beneficiary of that command. It is meant to rein in our carnal nature. We should be willing to put our life on the line to protect our Muslim friends' religious freedom. This is Bob's message. No doubt this will be followed by demands by Muslims for cultural accommodations. See, for example, Robert Spencer's book, Stealth Jihad. The implication here is that we should be willing to take the risks of allowing Muslims to be a part of American society as an expression of love, as an expression of taking up our cross, as an expression of laying our lives down for our friends. But given Islam's imperialistic, supremacist, political, and aggressive nature, this is a perfect prescription for defeat. So, Dr. Bob is saying the essence of the kingdom of God is love at this point in his presentation. What is the essence of the kingdom of God? It is more than love. It is the whole counsel of God. It is the fullness of the gospel. By saying that the essence of the kingdom of God is love only, Roberts is emptying it of content so that his Muslim friends can fill it with the content of their choosing. Then he says, love your enemies. And then he ends with this slide, we love you, and the Muslims like it. And I should remark that if you look at the comments section of his video, I scrolled down a considerable distance and I didn't find one criticism out of the hundreds and hundreds of comments that were there. And so I just have to think that this has been manipulated. I have a hard time believing that there were no critical voices in all the midst of the comments. I think this was all an orchestration. So how do I agree with what Roberts said? Yes, it is true that Jesus commands us to love our enemy. Therefore, the Christian is commanded to love the Muslim. But what action that requires is the question. Does that mean that we should allow unlimited numbers of Muslims into the West? Look at what happened to Europe. Does it mean that Christians should not resist civilization jihad? Does it mean that Christians should ignore the history of jihad? Does it mean that countries should give up their national identities? Problems what he said or didn't say. Robert's message assumes that a welcome presence of Muslims in the U.S., which is far from agreed upon by Americans, and for good reason. His message blames violence in the name of Islam on extremists and makes ordinary Muslims more victimized than non-Muslim groups. If this is true, it is because of infighting in the Muslim world, but that does not negate the danger of Islam to the U.S. Robert's presentation shows no knowledge of the history of jihad since the founding of Islam. See, for example, Paul Fregosi, Jihad in the West. Robert's presentation shows no knowledge of Islamic war doctrine. See, for example, the Book of Jihad in Sunan Abu Dawud and the Book of Jihad in Sahih Bukhari. And see my video. This is on Islamic war doctrine in my BitChute channel. Robert's presentation does not exhibit any knowledge of Islam's intention to rule the world. See these references. Robert's presentation does not show any awareness of the doctrine of taqiyya. See these references. Robert's presentation does not show any awareness of the supremacist character of Islam. Islam teaches that Muslims are the superior people. See these references. Roberts does not warn or admit that Islam teaches that war, kinetic and political, is a justified means for bringing its utopia about. See these references. Roberts' statement that Muslims are just like us is just not true. Roberts' presentation showed no awareness that the Muslims' first political loyalty is to the Islamic Ummah and what that means. See, for example, Sayyid Qutb, his chapter entitled Jihad in the Cause of God, found in his book entitled Milestones. This is operative Islamic war doctrine. You should read it. Notice that Roberts mentions that although we love the Jew, we equally love the Muslims, the Arabs, and the Palestinians and others. This is designed to erode evangelicals' historical support for Israel. This tactic was successfully used on Europe, as recounted in Bat Yor's book, Eurabia, the Euro-Arab Axis. Notice that he essentially triple counts those who would be Muslim and doesn't even mention other faiths by name. Robert's presentation does not show any awareness of the problems happening in Europe due to the gradual takeover by Islam. Robert's presentation shows no awareness of the problems happening in Minneapolis with Somalis or with Muslims taking over Dearborn, Michigan. Roberts does not tell evangelicals about the civilization jihad that they can expect if they continue to allow Muslims to immigrate. This is the thrust of Robert Spencer's stealth jihad. Okay, evaluation. There are several possible interpretations of why Bob Roberts has made this video. Assuming he is a good Baptist pastor, I will assume that he has a genuine desire to reach out to Muslims. As long as they are here and we are unable to deport them, it would be good to convert as many of them as possible away from Islam. However, Roberts does not talk explicitly about Muslim evangelism in this video. The fact that he does not do that tells me that he wants to function more as an interfaith cleric than as a missionary to Muslims. Islam has a teaching that the intention of dawah, that is mission, is to build a bridge to other faiths, but that is not for the purpose of meeting in the middle. It is meant to bring others to their side. This is the supremacist character of Islam at work. Christians should indeed learn enough Islamic doctrine to be able to refute it with respect, but also with clarity and power. But Christians should not expect to win all Muslims in their sphere of influence. Roberts does not tell us the teaching in the Quran that the Muslim is not to take Christians or Jews as his friends in Quran 552. And so why is there an imam named Zia in his church service who overhears him planning a deer hunt? Excuse me, I misspelled deer. Was he a guest speaker? Was he there to study the Christians? Why was he there? What is his relationship to this man Zia? Why does Roberts have such a close relationship with a Muslim man, Umar, that he flies clear to Afghanistan to attend Umar's mother's funeral? That seems highly irregular, that a Christian pastor of a megachurch would have a Muslim friend that is so close to him, so near and dear to his heart, that he would fly all the way over to Afghanistan to go to his mother's funeral. When his friend Umar says, "I came to the airport to meet you because you are my friend," he's either committing taqiyya or apostasy. Since he's probably not committing apostasy, he's probably committing taqiyya, that is deception. So Bob was probably duped. Okay, so now I'm showing this slide because this presentation by Dr. Bob Roberts was developed and put on by the Emir-Stein Center, and it sounds very, very humanistic and very positive. And this comes out of Berkeley, California, and you'd think, my gosh, this is a wonderful thing. It's probably a very humanistic center. So I did a little search on this, and it turns out the logo on the video, it looks like a symbol of peace, and it's got a nice sounding name, and the name Emir-Stein would lead one to believe that it's a center that is a collaborative effort of Mr. Emir, an Arab, and Mr. Stein, a Jew, right? But no such arrangement exists. It's just a center operating with the Zaytuna College in Berkeley, California. And Zaytuna College offers a bachelor's degree in Quranic law and theology. It is a 4-year program. So the video presentation was produced by an agency within this Zaytuna College, and considering the biblical distortions of the video, Zaytuna College is just using Bob Roberts as a frontman for their propaganda. So what is Bob Roberts' role in the video? Based on the information found at this link that I am showing here, it appears that Bob Roberts has a long-standing interest in interfaith bridge building. In the absence of any conspiracy, I would hypothesize that the following took place. Dr. Bob Roberts' interfaith bridge building reputation was discovered by the people at Emir-Stein Center at Zaytuna College. He probably was contacted and approached about being the presenter for this video. Zaytuna College used him as a frontman to conduct propaganda jihad, and as an interfaith cleric, he was a willing participant. He was willing to participate in this because he wants to do this bridge building, but he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't realize he's being used, or he's willing to be used. Why is this video so disturbing? This video is disturbing because it engages in a distortion of Christian theology. This video is disturbing because it completely blindsides evangelical Christians of the dangers of civilization jihad and propaganda jihad as a form of civilization jihad. This video is disturbing because it is an effort by the Emir-Stein Center to co-opt evangelicals to open their churches to Muslims. The video takes advantage of the ignorance of most Christians as to the dangers of Islamic doctrine. This video also demonstrates the dangers of keeping Christians ignorant of theology. So, how to inoculate yourself from what just happened in this video. And I do want to send you to this video and watch it. Okay, so I'm going to recommend that you read these 5 books. These are just, I could have chosen many other books, but I chose these 5 because I thought they were pretty good. And they cover certain areas. So the first one is Robert Spencer's book, The History of Jihad from Muhammad to ISIS. This is one genre, and that is the history of jihad. Every Christian and every secular and every Buddhist and every Hindu, everybody in the whole world needs to understand, have some understanding and knowledge of the history of jihad so that you know the crimes of Islam. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is another book by Robert Spencer entitled Stealth Jihad, and there were other books that I could have listed here, but I listed this one because it's very good. And that is, this genre of book is a book that shows you how civilization jihad works. Okay? You need to get at least one book about civilization jihad under your belt. The third book is by Ibn Warraq, Why I'm Not a Muslim, and he explains why he's not a Muslim. And that's important to know because you need to see what are some of the fallacies of Islam and some of the dishonesties of Islam. And Ibn Warraq is a truth teller. He's gonna give you the story straight. The fourth book is by Paul Nielsen. That's probably a pseudonym. I think that he is a Dutchman, and he wrote a book called How to Debate the Left in Islam, and this is a little more advanced because it'll begin to help you see how the leftists are running interference for Islam. And then the fifth book is by P. David Galbatz and Paul Sperry, called Muslim Mafia. This is another genre of book, and this book, and there are many books of this type, like Stephen Emerson is one, and there are many other writers. Another good one is Phil Haney. He has a book out called See Something, Say Nothing, which is excellent. So, but this kind of a genre of book teaches you how Islam has infiltrated our society, American society, and is trying to erode us from within. Okay, I want you to get a picture of that. So you need to read one book of that genre. And then I would recommend watching the 10-part mini course. So it's about a 10-hour commitment. It's entitled The Muslim Brotherhood in America, and it's produced by the Center for Security Policy, and it's found at this link that you see on the screen. And then I have a BitChute channel, which you can see at this link, and I have about 25 videos on this channel. And I also have a channel on YouTube, but they're pretty much the same videos. So those videos will get you going too. So this material should get you started on understanding why this video produced by the Emir-Stein Center is dangerous. Okay? So I hope this is helpful, and if you know anybody from that church, Northwood Church in Keller, Texas, please send a link to this video to them. And you Christians deep in the heart of Texas, I got to warn you, don't be fooled by videos like this. I am speaking to you from somewhere in the United States. Of course, you know I'm using a pseudonym, but I'm your brother, and I care for you, and I don't want you to be fooled. All right? Protect yourselves and protect this country. We've got a huge responsibility to protect this country from Islamization. God bless you all, and read these books, okay? All right, this was a case study in propaganda jihad. My name is Abin Al-Hurriya, son of freedom. God bless you all.